Thank you so much for joining. We're really excited to share all of this wonderful new information with you all, and welcome to our Foster Youth Dashboards webinar. First, I wanted to introduce you to the Educational Results Partnership team. My name is Annalise Green, and I'm the Outreach Specialist. I work closely with Malkeet Samra, our Outreach and Help Desk technician. And you may have heard from one of us before, helping explain how to get more involved or maximize your membership with Calpas Plus. We're also excited to have Vanessa Marrero join us as our team leader, serving as our Senior Director of Outreach and Engagement. I'll introduce Vanessa to you all later. And then also our wonderful colleague, Paul Vinder, is joining us today. Paul Vinder oversees project-related work from beginning to end, such as interfacing with our partners. So some of you might have spoken with her before, managing project timelines, etc. Paul Vinder has worked extensively with our foster youth projects, and we're happy to have her join us today. So before we launch into the content, I just wanted to share some quick logistical information with you all. Please view the slide on your screen to see an agenda for what we will be covering today. If you have any questions during the webinar, you can use the questions panel to type that. I will be monitoring all of the questions and chats coming in from the audience, and we will do a Q&A section at the end of the presentation. But feel free to send in your questions throughout at any point during the webinar. If we are unable to get to all of your questions today, please feel free to reach out to us afterwards and we can continue the conversation. If you have any technical problems or issues with the audio during the webinar, you can use this same panel to communicate with me and I'll try to help you troubleshoot that. All of our attendees are in listen-only mode, so please use that questions panel to communicate as needed. The audio and video recording of today's webinar will be sent to you in an email following the webinar tomorrow if you would like to share the content with others or listen again at a future time. Also, in your GoToWebinar panel, you will notice the Handouts section. We've included some actionable worksheets for these dashboards that we're covering today, in addition to some of the reports that guide our foster youth work. You are also encouraged to share these documents with other members of your organization. And right now we're going to start by administering a poll to the audience to get a better sense of who is joining us today. You should be seeing that on your screen now. So what kind of institution are you representing? And I'll give you all a few moments to respond. Okay, wonderful. Let's show the results. We're having a very strong presence from community colleges and universities today. Thank you so much for everyone that is joining us. Our goal is to be able to show you how these wonderful new tools are going to be actionable in your positions day to day. So we really appreciate you all coming. And at this point, I would now like to introduce one of our primary presenters, who is our new Senior Director of Outreach and Engagement, Vanessa Marrero. Vanessa Marrero seeks to empower practitioners to develop seamless 21st century educational models that meet the social, emotional, educational, and life goals for all students in the digital age, reducing the barriers of student mobility between school, college, and a career. With a wide range of positions in K-12 and community college, educational, nonprofit, and health clinical sectors, she has provided transformative organizational and community leadership, charged with school redesign, strategic planning, connected learning, and continuous improvement cycles in both California and New York. So we're really excited to have Vanessa on our team and welcoming her as one of our presenters today.
Thank you so much, Annalise. I appreciate the warm introduction. Hi, everyone. My name is Vanessa Marrero, and I'm the Senior Director of Outreach and Engagement at Educational Results Partnerships. Several of you on the line I know well through previous work. I'm excited to serve our system and to share relevant connections with you and how the dashboard can bolster our own planning efforts. As you all hug the ocean, ERP stands ready to support your work with students and communities. I'm particularly honored today to introduce Debbie Rauscher of John Burton Advocates for Youth. Debbie has a master's in social work and currently serves as John Burton Advocates for Youth Director of Education, providing leadership and strategic visioning around educational initiatives. Ms. Rauscher has worked in social services field for over 20 years, including extensive work in the areas of implementation of extended foster care and developing solutions to homelessness. Prior to her role, developing post-secondary education programs with California College Pathways, she has worked with John Burton Advocates for the Youth Homeless Youth Capacity Building Project. Her previous positions include serving as Deputy Director of the Tenderloin Housing Clinic, where she oversaw all program operations for over 1,500 units of supportive housing in San Francisco. Debbie, thank you so much for joining us today. We are hoping that we understand what you will want to get out of the webinar. Please let us know this by putting in your chat box what you're hoping to get out of today's webinar. Annalise will then share some connections out for all audience members to hear.
Yeah, thank you all so much for your input. I'm hearing, Vanessa, that they're interested in learning different ways to serve foster youth during the times of COVID-19 and how they can use these tools to help best support their students transition to college, and ultimately how Calpas Plus can help improve education outcomes for foster youth. So, just very interested in foster youth in general and ultimately how these tools can be actionable for them.
Thank you, Annalise, and thank you all for sharing your connections. I want to share with you the mission of Educational Results Partnership. We are a nonprofit organization that applies data science to help improve student outcomes and career readiness throughout the educational system. We use actionable data to accelerate educational productivity and economic justice. We use data science and predictive analytics to identify successful public education systems, practices, programs, and policies that are being delivered for the best results for students. Our focus is on closing the skills gap and improving labor market for aligned outcomes. Our commitment is on acceleration. We are committed to closing equity gaps in education and also the labor market. And our research and our field expert centers are working together to propel workforce outcomes for all, including students of color, foster youth, and also students in high poverty regions. We'd like to help identify our key momentum points and share them with you today. The momentum points pipeline that you see in front of you demonstrates our ability to connect intersegmental data. We focus on transition specifically. Our North Star is economic justice, and we lead toward this North Star for long-term success. Momentum points along the career pipeline are a great representation of how Educational Results Partnership, ERP, shifts the focus from what's wrong to what is working within our systems. We know that these momentum points get students into higher education and, most importantly, livable wage jobs. Where ERP comes in terms of helping identify is we will identify bright spots in educational systems and how they're meeting these momentum points. and then we'll work to replicate factors to lead to that success. We also know the critical importance of the alignment and access of the systems of care as part of our continuity planning and also equity planning efforts, specifically for foster youth students. Early content proficiency and ELA, English Language Arts, and math lead to an embedded instructional focus. This focus happens with career access instruction and work-based learning, and provides students with career awareness, preparation, and training that will garner the success and prosperity they deserve. We are now going to play a short video that provides an overview of ERP's largest statewide work, Calpas Plus, with one of our member institutions, Tulare King's College Career Collaborative, who is a dynamic partner in this work, who will share with you more about what Calpas Plus is.
Better serving students starts with getting access to reliable, usable, and actionable data. However, getting access to data can be difficult in today's educational ecosystem.
With the TK College and Career Collaborative, we were looking for a way to bring our individual district data and even some industry data, and then of course the post-secondary data together to try to make sense of what we were doing and what was happening in our region. And so in reaching out to ERP and Calpas Plus, we found some really experienced and very knowledgeable partners.
Calpas Plus is helping education leaders across California navigate and use their data in meaningful ways. As California's largest intersegmental system of student educational data, Calpas Plus contains student progress and outcomes data from K-12 through college to the workforce. It was created through funding and leadership provided by the California Community Colleges Chancellor's Office and is hosted by Educational Results Partnership. ERP is a nonprofit organization that applies data science to help improve students' outcomes and career readiness. Best of all, joining Calpas Plus is free. Here's how Calpas Plus works. A K-12 institution, community college, or university enters into a data sharing agreement and then uploads its data into Calpas Plus. Once the data are uploaded, system users are able to see the data in new ways that help them track students' performance over time. The information helps education leaders make strategic and data-informed decisions to improve student outcomes from pre-K through 12th grade and through college and the workforce. Data are presented across a series of user-friendly dashboards, tools, and waterfall visualizations, which include key momentum points and critical student success metrics. More than 1,500 members from K-12 institutions, community colleges, and universities are securely sharing and using their data through Calpas Plus.
Calpas Plus ERP has allowed us to really flourish and really bring forth regional data that we otherwise would not have without them.
Join Calpas Plus today. Get started now at calpasplus.org.
Thank you. We'd like for you all to make connections with the video. Please, in your chat box, share with us what is compelling about the video that connects to your work. And Elise will share connections to the audience for all to hear.
Yeah, Vanessa, I'm seeing some responses. Thank you all for sending them in. Please continue to do so. So for example, They're seeing connections for K-12 academics to college and career success, so the essential component of the transitional data. So being able to move beyond what they have available within their own institution and what happens to their students after they leave or beforehand. And then also being able to put that information into action and have an opportunity and a platform for everyone to responsibly share data to help unify successful educational outcomes for students.
Wow, that is great, Annalise. Thank you so much for sharing everyone's connections. And thank you all for participating with how the video connects to our work. We know how valuable your time is. I want to introduce you to my colleague, Paul Vender Dillon, who is the project coordinator at Educational Results Partnership, who will provide us with an overview of the foster youth research and data.
Thank you, Vanessa. Foster youth face a disproportionate number of hurdles towards academic success. These students, as we know, and as you all know, require a unique set of educational supports to achieve at the same level as their peers. Data-informed studies provide a deeper understanding of the challenges and barriers foster youth face and are a tool for foster youth practitioners to target effective interventions to close the persistent equity gap between foster youth and their peers. ERP has had the wonderful opportunity to previously produce 3 reports to better understand foster youth and their educational outcomes. The first report, Charting the Success, outlined data that showed foster youth who enrolled in college face significant academic and economic challenges, and that student support programs specifically for foster youth may address some of these issues. The second report, Accelerating Success, highlighted the importance of early alert systems and indicated providing targeted supports to a large percentage of foster youth on campus leads to better outcomes for these students. And our latest published report, Pipeline to Success, connected both high school and community college data to better understand how experiences within each system interrelate and offered recommendations to each of these. ERP believes in a true partnership with our members and partners. We consistently hear from the field to see how we can improve access to data. And just as you all have mentioned in the chat box, as Annalise asked that question. The Foster Youth Community College Dashboard has been around for a few years, and today we are excited to debut our new Foster Youth High School to Community College Transitions Dashboard. Listening directly from the field, we wanted to incorporate the feedback and have improvements on each of these dashboards to provide actionable data. The new dashboard allows for educators to see how their students are doing when they transition to a California community college from their K-12 district or institution. As we dive into these dashboards later in the webinar, Debbie and Vanessa will share more about the specific metrics and how they can be used to provide greater insight. Now, Debbie will share how her team and the many educators she works with use this data.
All right, thank you so much. This is Debbie Rauscher. I'm the Education Director, as was said, at John Burton Advocates for Youth. And I am here to talk about why do we care? Why do we care about data? So there's kind of 3 areas that I think about in terms of why having access to this kind of data can really translate into making a difference in the lives of young people. So that's informing program improvement, sustaining and growing funding for programs, and removing barriers that foster youth face when enrolling and moving through college. So we go to the next slide. So I'm going to start talking a bit about program improvements. So I think that one of the challenges in doing the kind of work that many of you on the call here today do, whether it's in a K-12 system or at a college or university, is that there's not a lot of information that helps practitioners really understand what is working and what isn't working. And so we end up relying a lot on anecdotal evidence, basically, which sometimes represents, the truth of what's going on and other times does not. And so having some real concrete, more quantitative data can really help you as a practitioner understand whether what you're doing is the best use of your time in order to achieve the outcomes you're hoping that you will be achieving. So some examples, one way that we've used the data a lot is looking at whether or not students are receiving financial aid, whether they're receiving Pell Grants, whether they're receiving Cal Grants, and that's actually informed a lot of our work, and I think it can inform practitioners as well to really look and see, are we ensuring that all of the foster youth on our campus, and specifically those who we are working with, are getting the financial aid for which they're eligible, because that's such a key element of college success. You can also look at what outcomes are you achieving and where are there areas for improvement. So for example, one of the things you'll see when we get to the point of showing you this new dashboard is that you can look and see if you're in a K-12 system, you can look and see of your high school graduates, how many of them successfully went on to matriculate into college. And so if those numbers are low, that might inform you about, maybe we need to think about what we're doing to shore people up over that summer to make sure that they get from point A to point B from high school to college. Linkages to services. So again, if you're working in a high school setting, you can see whether students, once they get to college, are accessing services like EOPS and counseling services and doing an ed plan. And this is kind of a spoiler alert, telling you some of the fun stuff you're going to see on the dashboard. And so you can see, hey, maybe we need to do a better job making sure that those connections are made before they leave us here in high school. If you're working at a college, you can look at questions like retention and GPA, and maybe, are you doing better in one than the other? Should you be focusing your attentions more on keeping students enrolled or focusing more on their academic outcomes? You can also do some comparisons between first-year students versus all students. And so you can take a look at, are the outcomes very different for those groups? And if so, should you be targeting more resources to one or the other in a different way? And then finally, you're going to see on the dashboard, there's a lot of exciting new data that actually shows how students are faring once they leave college and transition into employment. And so that can really help inform you as you think about what you're doing to set students up for success after they graduate from college. It also will let you look at change over time. So you can see what's getting better, what's staying the same, what's getting worse, and that can also help you to think about what you should be doing differently. I heard somebody say recently that the plural of anecdote is not data. And so just sort of observing and having a bunch of anecdotes about what you think might be going on certainly can provide you with a certain kind of helpful information, but having the actual data to look at might tell you a different story and can be very instructive. Next slide. So the other way the data is helpful, and this is one that's very near and dear to my heart, is influencing funding. And so I thought about actually calling this slide something like data to dollars. So some ways that we have used data to influence funding. Many of you are probably familiar with the Next Up program. It's a $20 million annual investment at 45 campuses to support foster youth programs. And it was the evidence that we were able to pull directly from Calpas Plus that showed some of the challenges that foster youth were facing when they were attending college that really informed and convinced the legislature that that was a worthwhile investment. So that data was really crucial. One of the other data points that we pulled out of Calpas Plus was that foster youth and community colleges were accessing Cal Grants at extremely low rates. Very few of them were getting a Cal Grant. That led to expanded eligibility specifically for foster youth for the Cal Grant program with an associated budget allocation of $5 million annually. Other data that's been looked at, has demonstrated really high rates of homelessness among college students. That last year led to a $19 million annual investment to create college-focused rapid rehousing programs specifically targeting college students experiencing homelessness. So you can see that data can really lead to some substantial investments. And you as a program practitioner can use this data similarly. I think in particular for those of you who are working in the college systems, Having evidence both of the needs of foster youth and the successes that your program is realizing can be enormously valuable in ensuring that you are able to maintain and perhaps even increase the investment that is made by both private philanthropy, the state, and your college administration into your program. Next slide. And then finally, removing barriers. So again, just a couple of examples from my work on the policy level around this. When we first did the Charting the Course report back in 2015 with ERP, a lot of the information was, verifying things that we already suspected about foster youth outcomes. But one of the things that we hadn't anticipated seeing was the very low rates of Pell Grant access. And that has sparked over the last 5 years a number of different policy efforts to remove barriers to access to financial aid. So streamlining the process around verifying foster care status, increasing the engagement of the child welfare system to ensure that foster youth have support with completing the FAFSA. The FAFSA challenge, which many of you from the county offices of education might be familiar with, working with the foster youth programs at the county offices of education to use data from the web grant system to ensure that all foster youth have the opportunity to complete a FAFSA. Another thing that we realized from looking at the Calpas Plus data was how many foster youth were losing their financial aid because they were not making satisfactory academic progress, or SAP. And so a bill was passed to expand the eligibility for the Chafee grant, specifically around SAP disqualification and making the standards more flexible. So these are just a couple of examples from my work where data can really lead to very substantive changes that improve outcomes for foster youth. Next slide. So I want to say a word before I turn it back to Vanessa to really launch into showing the dashboard about how foster youth are identified for this dashboard, and this may be familiar to some of you. Unlike the K-12 systems, the information that is available on the college version of the dashboard, it comes through student self-report. Most campuses populate their identification of foster youth through the question on CCC Apply. If you have the time, I know, right? But if any of you have the inclination to meet with your IT/IR folks, I recommend doing so to just understand, if nothing else, how that foster youth flag is populated on your campus, if it's just through CCC Apply. And then some campuses have managed to supplement that by using their Next Up list, their Chafee ETV grant roster, FAFSA information, to identify students who maybe didn't self-report on CCC Apply. There was an analysis from one large K-12 district where what was found was about 69% of high school seniors who were identified as in foster care as a high school senior were flagged as foster youth in Calpas Plus. So we know that this identification is not perfect. It's not a data match with CDSS, but that 69% number, well, there's a substantial number that aren't being identified. It does tell us that, we're capturing a good chunk of the foster youth through this. And so the data that's made available through these systems, while not 100% perfect, for the purposes of using it as aggregate data, I think is giving us a pretty good picture of what's happening with foster youth on the college campuses. And the way that the data is identified on the K-12 side is a little bit different because districts are going to be uploading that data, and so that's going to be a more kind of verified foster youth population. But on the college side, it is self-report, although we're working on trying to move something forward eventually where we can do more verification through the child welfare system. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Vanessa.
Thank you so much, Debbie. I know personally I appreciate your expertise around all this work in reference to policies. I'd like to talk a little bit about alignment and system coherence in reference to our continuity planning efforts and our equity plan efforts. Next slide. So we know that each of us in the system are focused on planning efforts, particularly right now. And I think, thinking about what Debbie has mentioned in reference to removing barriers, and really looking at how flags are happening, where our foster youth young people are in the system, who in the system is supporting our students, both in the K-12 segment and the community college segment. We know so well that system coherence is essential. And we see that Calpas Plus as an initiative, as well as the ERP team, is going to be able to really bolster these efforts. So if we look at the continuity plan, for example, at the K-12 level, there is a focus around growth and achievement, right? Enhanced services as it relates to foster youth, and also professional development. If we look at community college, we know the equity plan and all of the efforts that have been underway around access, retention, transition, and transfer. And so we see that there's some alignment here. There's 3 similarities amongst these 2 planning efforts. The similarities are that we're all focused on student participation and progress, right? We also are focused on professional learning and really understanding exactly how to support our learners and also our teams during this time. And next, we have a laser-like focus on students with unique needs, particularly foster youth students. One of the things that we're offering up as an ERP team within the Calpas Plus initiative are 3 strategies. These are strategies that are going to assist us with these planning efforts and will optimize system coherence. The first one is prepare. If you haven't already done so and you're on this line and this call, I encourage you to become and participate and join the movement around Calpas Plus. It requires an executed MOU as designated by a school superintendent, and also an upload of data files. If you are currently a member, thank you. And also continue to upload your data. The next piece in prepare is to connect with my team. What we're going to do is we're going to reach out to each and every one of you that are on the line today and set up a 15-minute call where you can utilize, which is our next strategy, us as a network of care to support your planning efforts with your unique district and your unique communities. Another way that you can utilize our tools and resources is through 2 worksheets that we'll note a little later. These are worksheets that you can use as you look at your dashboards once you're a Calpas Plus member. And also, Paul Vender and Debbie mentioned reports regarding foster youth. We're going to show you where those are located. And we're also going to refer to the handouts area where you can download these reports. Between the worksheets, what we're doing around continuity planning, the publications, the knowledges and acquisition information from this webinar, it will position us to really bolster our efforts around foster youth students specifically. And also the next step is that ERP is going to launch learning sessions where we can go deeper. This will focus on personal, professional learning using a right array of data science and field topics. It'll be a space for us to come together, learn through listening, reflecting, actualizing our next course of directions. These are learning sessions that are not going to be deliberative and will not have a one-size-fits-all. They will focus specifically on the needs of our practitioners. And the last strategy is connect. I am going to reach out to you as mentioned and really understand what are the needs happening. We know that each community on the line has unprecedented needs right now. And as a colleague in this work with you all, We will be able to support each other using best practices, discussing, understanding new ways to embed the dashboards and what we are doing. And also, we're going to provide subsequent webinar series that will go deeper and make connections, application, and utilization of how to streamline the data that we see in our dashboards with our efforts happening on the ground. And I want to just recap. These are 3 strategies that we are offering up to the community on this call. Prepare, right? Prepare with your membership, gather our data, upload your data, engage with ERP team to think about and focus different continuity efforts in your work. Utilize our resources, our tools, which were the worksheets, the publications, our data dashboards, and our experts that are on the line. And also connect, right? Connect with us, form deeper relationships in order to support and promote foster youth success. Now, we're really excited to go into and transition into the Calpas Plus screens. The first dashboard that we're referencing in this conversation is titled Foster Youth 914 Transitions Dashboard. This dashboard allows us to understand how foster youth compare to non-foster peers in high school. We can also see the transition to colleges, community colleges, and each matrix provides greater understanding representative of the districts who submit our data. So first, I want to preference, there are several tabs within this dashboard. And remember, in order to participate with utilizing this dashboard, one would have to participate as a Calpas Plus member. For today's conversation, we're going to focus on 2 tabs seen here. One is students, and the other one is post-secondary transitions. And I'm going to walk you through this at an overview. And also remember that there's going to be points and times when we can come together to talk about this more specifically for your district as you participate in this movement. The first tab is students. So let's look at this first matrix. This first matrix is talking about 9th through 12th grade. This is a place where we can see and identify early warning indicators and really think through our tiered interventions and the work we are doing around MTSS. And remember that as a K-12 institution, right, a lot of us are focused on strong workforce programs, career access education, and career pathways. And so we know that alignment, there is alignment there with community colleges. So how can we together support our young people to transition into community college in a successful way that will provide them with the economic sustainability they need? Our next metric is attendance. One of the huge focuses around the local continuity plan is attendance, and we know that if we can look at different attendance between and compare between our non-foster youth students and our foster youth students, this provides us with some connections around disproportionality, and also it will provide us with connections on what strategies of engagement can we use with caregivers, with support teams, with student study teams in order to bolster the success of our foster youth students. Next, we see school mobility. School mobility represents the number of schools in a given year. And this area is important for our counseling teams to ensure that our students are getting the partial credit that they have accumulated at one high school and that is on their transcript as they move through other high schools. This will assist with school mobility and graduation. Next, we see suspension and expulsion. Suspension and expulsion, once you put the comparison flag, you can see the rates and compare to non-foster youth students. And this can also support early warning indicators and design methods around MTSS. One of the key things around suspension and expulsion is using positive behavioral support and ensuring students are connected, that they feel engaged, and ways to do that is connecting with your partners in your communities that can support with programs such as mentoring, youth leadership, or any expanded learning opportunities. And we're so happy to have nonprofit partners on the call today because you are vital to this work. And next, we see homelessness. And homelessness, just so you know, if your count is under 10, this will be suppressed. So because we want to make sure that students are not identifiable. Let's go to our next metric. Our next metric is around students with disabilities. Students with disabilities, also we can show comparison with non-foster youth students. There is a huge movement right now around focusing universal design for learning principles to ensure that there is flexibility in the way our students access material, right? Engage with it and also show us what we know. And the key is flexibility. We're looking at IEPs, individual education plans, to represent the least restrictive environment and to maximize the potential of the transition planning component to include goals that are strategic around post-secondary learning. This will bridge the gaps between K-12 and community college as we plan for goals and students as they move forward. And in thinking about that, we see the metric concurrently enrolled. Concurrent enrollment is an amazing opportunity for our students, especially as it relates to our college career indicator for the state of California. And we know that early access to college instruction does lead to increased persistence over time. These are courses that we can include our youth with career workforce courses, for example, CTE courses at the college level. We can also look at other types of courses as supported by our district policies. The main piece here is that the long-term benefit for the student is that they would have decreased seat time. This would also decrease the overall financial investment. We also want to make sure that what we're implementing provides students with connections and awareness of programs and resources that they may be eligible for later when they do matriculate into college. And the next metric is school type. School type, this refers to different school types such as alternative schools of choice, high schools, continuation schools, juvenile court schools. And again, we can see where our learners are and also plan for engagement around academic, social, and emotional needs amongst the 3 tiers. And next, 2.0 GPA. This is an important indicator. This indicator will help us provide early warning signs and also the tiered interventions at tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 within the MTSS, and also will lead to overall persistence. The next piece of this that's really important is GPAs and its connection to access to different programs and resources that students would be eligible in community college. Now I want to go to that second tab that I referenced. The second tab that we're going to discuss today is post-secondary transitions. But remember that I said that we're going to have another webinar that will go over the other tabs. So if you look at post-secondary transitions, this is a huge step to students submitting, right, college applications and making sure that they submit the CCC apply and that your foster youth students in the grades 11th and 12th are identified and that there's close academic and social emotional learning advisement as it applies to college. The next metric in this area is regarding students who actually enroll. And this speaks to some of the issues that we see around summer melt. As we see 12th grade, right, like such as this year, we know that if we focus on our students who are foster youth, if we build plans with teams and we identify connecting programs, right, over the summer, engage learners and work with community-based organizations such as mentoring, internships, employability type of programs, that we ensure that students are connected to housing and food and have access, right? We know that they will show and be enrolled in the first day, which is what we want. We want learners engaged and showing up the first day of college. The next dashboard that we're going to go into is the one that Debbie had referenced earlier, which is called the Foster Youth Dashboard. This dashboard is speaking most about community colleges. The Foster Youth Dashboard is aligned to milestones and provides insights to us in a variety of areas, including workforce outcomes. In this dashboard, we can actually upload cohorts, and Paul Vender is going to discuss more information regarding that.
Hi, everyone. We're really excited to share that the cohort tool is functioning and colleges can upload and view their cohort data on this dashboard. So, you know, if you're looking to go ahead and have an understanding of a specific set of foster youth students and how they're doing in community college, you can upload your data on this dashboard. We've already received cohort uploads from a few of the colleges already, and we'll have them updated to the dashboard shortly. If you would like to confirm your submission or have any issues with it, please feel free to reach us at outreach@edresults.org.
Thank you, Paul Vender. So that what I mentioned to everyone that I'm going to connect for a one-to-one 15-minute call for all of those community colleges on the line that have interest and are doing work around uploaded cohorts. That can be a point of interest in our conversation, okay? For today, for the rest of this demonstration, we're going to focus on 2 out of the 4 tabs. The first tab is Equip, that we'll focus on, and the second one is Enroll. Remember that we'll have another time when we're going to look at Earn and Embark. So let's look at Equip. What Equip provides us is an understanding of students' financial awards and participation in special programs over any year. Students participating in programs such as cooperating agencies, Foster Youth Education Support Program, College Promise, Cal Grant, and Pell Grant, as well as Chafee are noted here. Additionally, we know that some colleges may offer other opportunities under their single-step program to provide other health insurance supports, tax credits, financial counseling, and services around legal aid for our students. These are all areas that remove those barriers and that ensure that our students are able to persist. Our second matrix looks at different financial aid within a special selected year. So it's looking at those same programs, but it's a selected year. Our third matrix is around EOPS, right? So EOPS is Equal Opportunity Program Services. This is located at our 2-year and 4-year colleges, and it does require eligibility. So really ensuring that 12th graders who are identified as foster youth are informed of these benefits and can apply and participate is going to be critical to making sure that they're persisting in the next year. Next, we have students participating in disabled students programs and services. This is another program that requires eligibility. 12th grade teams, as part of a student's IEP or 504 plan, can look at those transition goals that I mentioned, really clarify what the goals will be for your student in the subsequent year, right? And strategies and activities and how to get there, right? That will bolster access to specialized services. A key here is access to specialized services, students engaging in content, and also services to support learning, okay? Now let's look at Enroll, which is the other tab. Enroll is a dashboard that will look at enrollment, which provides us with factors that assist with developing planning and intervention and activities to assist in overall persistence. I've mentioned persistence a couple of times. Persistence is critical. So let's look at the first metric. Enrollment in a given year, right? And this includes K-12 students who are concurrently enrolled. So remember when we talked about concurrent enrollment, young people, those are also included in this dashboard. This first metric around gender is focused on a selected year for gender, and we can see this over time. There's another metric that focuses on sexuality, sexual orientation and gender identity, and another metric focusing on students experiencing homelessness. This one is a particular interest right now given our pandemic crisis. So what supports on campus and within your immediate community can we plan for students who are homeless? And how can we optimize those supports during this time? The next is around race and ethnicity, and this can assist us with disproportionality rates as well as ongoing efforts around our equity plan, and also for our K-12 institutions, knowing the information here later on for our students who are in the college system right now can serve as actually a backwards mapping tool for ourselves, right? And the next one is around age. And the next is around applications to students who are enrolled in a specific year, in a selected year in college. The 8th metric around retained all primary years, this is actually going into more specifically the efforts around retention and transition that we are seeking for under the equity planning efforts. So this looks at enrolled students from the fall term, right, to the spring term, right, same year, right, same academic year. Critical, especially for students in the first year of college. If we go to the next one, we see retained spring to fall, right? So spring, we know that there's summer next, and then there's fall. So again, there's that summer time when that summer melt will need to, may happen. And we want to make sure that learners, students are engaged. So they can be engaged in any college internships. They can be engaged in employability programs. They can be engaged in any training programs around their careers, especially if they're involved in a guided pathway. So those are opportunities around planning that can be done as we look at our educational planning efforts. Next, we see the 10th matrix, which is a matrix around goals and really identifying, students identifying different goals. And we can see clearly that a focus around building skills to enter in advanced careers could be a great goal for us to set, right, for this year and subsequent years in terms of preparation and training around careers and industry for our students. Next, I reference the educational planning process, right? The educational planning process has been effective for quite a few years in the community college space. And this provides some trajectory and course work for our students. So again, for our foster youth students, really making sure that the education planning process is effective, right? And looks at the skills of the learner, the interests and the dreams, while also making sure that they're on track and to graduate. And then the next is advising or counseling. And I mentioned this earlier. The community college, is full of counselors who are dynamic and really excited about their work as practitioners. And this is a space on this dashboard that we can see students who are engaged with such efforts. And also then we can plan for, how we would engage onward. So I wanted to take the time to share with you helpful resources. In your handouts, right, section of your control panel, you'll see the reports and you'll see those worksheets that I mentioned, right? So the reports and the worksheets are ways to utilize, right, into what we're doing around our planning efforts. So I'm not going to show those right now just because of time. And also, I want to make sure that we're able to answer maybe one or two questions from the audience regarding any of the information that was presented. And then those questions that we don't get to, we'll provide follow-up through email for you for those questions. So now we'll invite you to ask us any questions to any of the members of our team.
Yeah, thank you so much for that overview, Vanessa. We've received a few questions. For example, one of the more recent ones, they wanted specification on the community college dashboard on when there isn't a percentage visible. So for example, from retained spring to fall, is that because the data is not yet available?
Yeah, that's a great question. So when we were showing the Foster Youth Community College dashboard on the fall to spring, it won't show for this academic year as or from fall to spring it'll show, but from spring to fall of the next year it won't show until the data is incorporated. So there is a lag time until that next term data, until ERP receives that.
Great, thank you, Paul Vender. We've also received many questions. How can we know if our institutions are participating? We have, and I can answer that, we have a page on our website called our member list, if you might want to pull that up, where you can search your institution, so your district, your community college, etc., and then see whether or not the MOU status is active and how much data has been uploaded as well. Another question that we have is how you can submit foster youth data or cohort data and kind of what kind of the information is required in order to do that.
Yeah, both really great. That's a really great question. And we encourage for all members to submit data regularly for both the foster youth cohort upload for the community colleges, as well as the 5.7 reports for the K-12 dashboard or the 914 dashboard, the high school to community college dashboard. And both of those uploads will have a one-pager in regards to the exact columns and the formatting for each of those submissions. So if you go to the resources tab, or when you go to select to upload data, if you scroll down, it'll have for each of those where how to format that.
Okay, wonderful. Yes, I'm receiving more questions as well, just like step-by-step process to see if your institution is participating or what the benefits of utilizing the Calpas Plus program is for us. I'm absolutely going to follow up with you guys specifically asking about those questions for that step-by-step process and additional resources.
This is Debbie. Can I just add one thing? And I apologize if you already said this, but I just want to make sure everybody's clear that if you're with a community college, you're automatically a member. You don't have to do anything. And so it's only the K-12 districts that need to do something.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. If you're part of any community college in California, we already have active MOU and complete data coverage for you. And also, I am receiving a question about whether or not there are any other workforce metrics or data. If there's any other metrics that they have questions about moving forward, who should they be contacting?
Thanks, Annalise. Yeah, so I would say contact me. My email is V as in Vanessa Marrero, Marrero @edresults.org. Again, I want to make sure we're going deeper with everyone, right? So each person on the call, we can have some conversation about your specific needs and these questions. And then additionally, what we'll do on our end is we're gonna, all the questions that are populated, we're gonna again respond to those questions in an email that is unique to that specific audience member.
Yes, someone was asking about repeating your email. All of our email information is currently on the screen, or you can just generally reach out to us at outreach@edresults.org. I think those are all of the questions that I'm seeing at this time, and we're a couple minutes over, so thank you all so much for your patience and for joining our webinar. Presenters, do you have any last words that you would like to add?
Thank you all for taking the time. I know that lots is going on in your space. We appreciate you for listening, understanding, and engaging with us. Thank you, Debbie, for your leadership and advocacy and work for our young people identified in foster youth. Personally, I appreciate your work, and I'm excited to learn some more from you.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, everyone. I'm going to stick around for just a couple more minutes in case we have any other questions from our attendees. And if not, I hope you all have a wonderful afternoon, and we'll talk to you soon.